Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of the Final Whistle podcast. I'm your host, Luca Wilson, and today we'll be looking at the top free agents at every position and some sleeper names to look out for as well. First, we will take a look at the quarterback position. I think the number one target for everyone that needs a quarterback this offseason is Sam Darnold, 27 years old, threw for 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns, and 12 picks. With a 66% completion percentage, I think he'd be a great fit in either of the New York teams or in Las Vegas with Chip Kelly. I think that would be a great fit, and that's where I want to see him go is Las Vegas. You saw a little bit of issues with him in the playoffs last year. Once the games got big, he kind of shied away, but I think he can still be a great, serviceable quarterback in the NFL for a couple years to come, for sure. And number two, I have Justin Fields. He only started 6 games this year, had 1,100 yards passing, 5 passing touchdowns, a pick, 289 yards, and 5 touchdowns with a 66% completion percentage. He's only 25 years old. People think he's a lot older than he is. I think he could go to any team and really be an X factor under the right coaching, of course, because he hasn't had a lot of people believe in him so far in his career. And I think that if he goes to a new team and doesn't stay in Pittsburgh, he will be a great addition for some team that's just looking for that spark. At number three, I have Russell Wilson, just the dude that took Justin Fields' job midway through the year. He's 36 years old. He started 11 games, had 2,400 yards passing, 16 passing touchdowns, 5 picks, and 2 rushing touchdowns with a 55% completion percentage. And at the end of the year, they lost like 6 games in a row to close out the season. And I definitely don't see him coming back to Pittsburgh. I don't really know where he should go, but he will get picked up somewhere, maybe even Las Vegas with Pete Carroll. But I just don't think he is the quarterback he used to be. And whatever team that he ends up going to probably is going to end up being disappointed for if they are wanting the Russell Wilson of old. And number four, I have Aaron Rodgers. New York told him that they will be going a separate way from him. He is 41 years old, but this year he threw for close to 3,900 yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 picks, and a 63% completion percentage. I also don't think he is the Aaron Rodgers of old. I think whatever team he goes to probably is he's going to want his guys, and I don't think that flies anymore when you're a 41-year-old about to be 42. So Aaron Rodgers is my fourth ranked quarterback in this free agency class. And some notable names, just like some backups or maybe could start a game or so. I have Jameis Winston. He's a spark plug for whatever team he goes to. Mac Jones, a very serviceable backup. Daniel Jones, I think he could compete for a starting job some places if it is also the right coaching staff. Marcus Mariota and Jimmy G, some older guys that can still win you games. I think those are all great options for backups this year in the free agency market. And then next, we will talk about the running back class. It's a little iffy running back class with the top guy, in my opinion, being Najee Harris. Had a 1,000-yard rushing season. He's gotten 1,000 yards each year that he's been in the NFL. He had 1,043 yards this year, 6 rushing touchdowns, and averaged 4 yards a carry with 36 receptions and 283 receiving yards. He's only 26 years old. If he doesn't stay in Pittsburgh, I could see him being a great running back for literally a lot of teams in the NFL, but it just depends on if he wants to stay in Pittsburgh or not. At number two, I have Aaron Jones, the 30-year-old. He rushed for 1,100 yards this year, 5 rushing touchdowns, averaged 4.5 yards a carry, had 51 receptions, 408 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Was great in Minnesota this year after Green Bay kicked him to the curb for Josh Jacobs, which also seemed like the right move. I think he should stay in Minnesota. He did a great job there, and Kevin O'Connell's offense is great for quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers. So I think that Aaron Jones will be a great piece for anyone, but I think he should stay in Minnesota. At number three, J.K. Dobbins, 900 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4.6 yards an attempt, 32 receptions, and 153 yards receiving. I don't think he's a great receiving back per se, but I think that he's a great running back for this Jim Harbaugh scheme. I don't know if they're going to keep going with him or go a little younger and a little less injury problems, but I still think he's a great running back in this league. Probably 2 to 3 more years of great J.K. Dobbins, so he probably won't get that long-term contract like maybe Najee Harris will, but I think he's still a great running back for this free agency class. And number 4, Jordan Mason, breakout star for the 49ers this year, 25 years old, had 790 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, 5.2 yards an attempt. 11 receptions and 91 receiving yards. Didn't really get used like McCaffrey, but was a great running back this year. If you had him in fantasy, you probably felt pretty good about picking him up. And he's probably not going to stay in San Fran because they do have Christian McCaffrey, and he's probably going to get paid a little bit. But I think wherever he goes is getting a good amount of time and a quality running back at only 25 years old. Some other notable names for the running back position, you have Jalen Warren, Rico Dowdle, Javonte Williams, Nick Chubb, and Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb is the most interesting one here for me because who knows how he's going to be after that leg injury. Didn't really play too much this year with Cleveland and wasn't really too exciting when he did play. But I think that he still can be a good power back. Not necessarily a bell cow back anymore, but I still think it is an intriguing pickup for whoever signs him. And Jalen Warren. I mean, everybody thought that he would have been the Pittsburgh starting running back, but Najee showed out. But he's a great in the running game and the pass game, and it's going to be tough for Pittsburgh if they lose both of those. Next, probably the most stacked position group in this free agency class, you have the wide receivers. Now, number 1, there's some rumors that he's going to get franchise tagged. It's T. Higgins from the Bengals, 26 years old. This season had 73 catches, 911 yards, and 10 touchdowns. There's a lot of teams that want T. Higgins, but Cincinnati also wants him and has that franchise tag to use for him. So I think that that's what they're going to end up doing is franchise tagging him to keep that electric offense together, which I think is the smart move. Number 2, which could be the number 1 if T. Higgins does get franchise tagged, Chris Godwin only played 7 games this year, had 50 catches, 576 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think he is a great receiver, 28 years old, still has a couple more years of elite receiver in him. Depends how he comes back from this injury. But I know that I'd love for my favorite team to sign Chris Godwin, and I think that everybody wants to sign Chris Godwin, and he will be a great piece for whoever he ends up signing with. At number 3, you have Keenan Allen, 32 years old, 70 catches, 744 yards, and 7 touchdowns with the Chicago Bears this year. He was a great piece for Caleb Williams. Too bad Caleb Williams got sacked like 60 times this year, but I still think that he is a great piece. He's probably going to want to go to a contender because he is getting older, but I don't know what contender will want to sign him, but I think that he still will be a good piece for wherever he ends up going. Number 4, you have Amari Cooper, 30-year-old. He had 44 catches, 547 yards, and 4 touchdowns this year, split between the Browns and the Bills. I think the Bills should re-sign him. I think he is a great receiver, but also he didn't perform his best this year, but I think he still is a great receiver for the Bills, and I think that's where he should end up staying. But you never know if the Bills want to draft someone younger and get Josh Allen some younger pieces. Number 5, another guy that played for the Bills, went to the Texans this year and tore his ACL. Stephon Diggs, 31 years old, 47 catches, 500 yards, and 3 touchdowns this year. He only played in 8 games because of the torn ACL, like I said. But I don't think the Texans are going to want him. And there's a lot of teams that probably aren't going to want him because he is such a diva in the locker room. And if you don't give him about 7 targets a game, he is going to cry a little bit. But I think he still is a very talented receiver if you put that stuff aside. And he still will be a capable receiver for even a contender, I think, in this league. And next person is a guy that asked for a trade. I don't think he is the number 6 receiver, but he did ask for a trade. He's not necessarily a free agent, and that is Cooper Kupp. 67 catches, 710 yards, and 6 touchdowns this year. He only played in 11 games because of an injury. He's 31 years old. I don't know why the Rams are getting rid of him, but I think he will be a great receiver to even teach receivers. I've heard Puka Nacua say a lot that he is one of the smartest guys that he's ever been around, and he will be great for a young offense, maybe even like the Bears or someone like that that has a young quarterback. Even the Commanders, I think. that would be great to step any of those young quarterbacks up to the next level and really succeed in the NFL. Some other notable names for this free agency class is like a wide receiver 2 or 3 is Darius Slayton, Hollywood Brown, Mike Williams, Westbrook Akine, Josh Palmer, and D-Hop. And then also the 49ers told Debo that he can look for a trade for them as well. So I think any of these guys can really be a good wide receiver 2 or 3. And then obviously for Debo, he can be a great wide receiver 1 in this league if he's used right. But I think that Westbrook Akine was kind of touchdown dependent this year, so he could not really be like that main guy that's going to get looked at. But I could see like the Jaguars giving him a lot of money just because that feels like a Jaguars thing to do. But yeah, that's the wide receiver class for this 2025 free agency. Next, we have the tight ends, kind of a dry class this year. Number 1, I have Zach Ertz, the 34-year-old that played for Washington this year, had 66 catches, 654 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I think the Commanders should bring him back because he was a great safety valve for Jaden Daniels this year, and everyone knows that you need a safety valve in this league for your young quarterbacks to progress correctly, and that's something they haven't done in Indianapolis, Carolina, a couple other these places that the quarterbacks were struggling, and it's because you don't have that reliable tight end for your young quarterbacks. Number 2, Mike Gesicki, 29 years old, 65 catches, 665 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You could even say that he's the number 1 tight end in this class. It's very interchangeable because of how young Gesicki is compared to Zach Ertz. I just think Zach Ertz has proven a lot more than Gesicki. And then number 3, Tyler Conklin, the 29-year-old, 51 catches, 449 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Kind of just a dry class after 1 and 2. And then number 4, I have Juwan Johnson from the Saints. He had 50 catches, 548 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's 28 years old. He's probably going to just end up staying with the Saints or going to the Broncos, probably just staying in that type of system. And then the other notable names are Austin Hooper and Tommy Tremble. Like I said, this tight end class isn't very deep, and you can't really say a lot about them because it is kind of a dry class, but that's your tight end class. Next, you have the offensive tackles. Number 1, Ronnie Stanley, 30 years old, going to command a lot of money in this free agency class, and I think he deserves it. A great lineman for the Ravens. The Ravens would be dumb if they didn't keep him, but you can't pay everybody either. Number 2, Alaric Jackson, the 26-year-old, really stood out this year in Los Angeles, and I think he's also going to command a lot of money in free agency because he is only 26 years old. Number 3, Morgan Moses, probably one of the bright spots on the offensive line for the Jets this year, 33 years old, and I think that he is still very serviceable on the offensive line. Number 4, Tyron Smith, injury prone, probably not going to have more than a 1-year contract, and probably going to go to a team that has a little bit of an older quarterback just because he is older as well, and you don't want him to get hurt and then it impacts your young quarterback. Number 5, Jedrick Wills, 25 years old, out of Alabama. I thought he was going to be one of the best offensive tackles in that class with Tristan Wirfs, but he kind of fell off and Wirfs just kept progressing. So I hope Wills can kind of find his sweet spot in the NFL, just probably not in Cleveland. And then number 6, Kelvin Beachum, kind of the same as Tyron Smith. He's 35 years old, probably not going to command a lot of money in this class, but he is a nice veteran piece for an offense that is looking to contend. Next, interior offensive lineman, and I think this position has the best free agent in the class. You have Trey Smith, the 25-year-old offensive guard that plays in Kansas City. He's going to command a lot of money for whoever pays him. Probably going to be the Chicago Bears, if I'd have to guess, that are going to give him the most money. And he's probably going to help Caleb Williams really take that next step and show the world why he was picked number 1. Number 2, Brandon Sheriff, 33 years old, getting up there in age. I still could see him getting a decent contract because he has been good for so long. Number 3, Kevin Zeitler, also 34 years old, a little older, but still has done it at the top for a long time. And I could see him also getting a good amount of money in free agency. Number 4, the center from Indianapolis, Ryan Kelly, getting up there in age too, 31 years old. I don't know why the Colts would get rid of him. I think he should just stay in Indianapolis, ride his career out. But Indianapolis needs a culture change because you saw a lot of off the field stuff happening this year that I think needs to be fixed, and I thought would have been fixed by firing their GM and their head coach. They decided to keep both of them, and we'll see how that works out this year. Number 5, Tevin Jenkins, 26 years old. I think he's going to get a decent contract, maybe even stays in Chicago, but I think this will be a good pickup for anybody. I mean, 26 years old, has time to develop, and I think he'll be a great interior offensive lineman. Maybe not great, but definitely a starter in this league for a while. Number 6, another Colt, Will Fries. I think that he is also very, very good. Probably should stay in Indianapolis if Indianapolis was smart, but they don't like to spend much money. So we'll see what contract he gets from other places. Number 7, an all-time great, Zach Martin. He's getting up there in age, 34 years old. He's probably a shell of himself now, and I don't think that he'll get as much money as he did when he was that all-pro guard on that crazy offensive line that Dallas had. But I still think he is a good starter in this league. And number 8, James Daniels, 27 years old, had a little bit of a slow start to his career in Chicago, kind of picked it up in Pittsburgh. But, I mean, I guess we'll see how much money he also gets in the free agency. Next, we're moving on to the defense. And this is the position that makes the most money on the defense, the edge rushers. Number 1, I have Josh Sweat, the 27-year-old on the Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles. When you win the Super Bowl, I think you command more money. People want to win Super Bowls, so they get people that have already won Super Bowls and that were starting and making an impact in the Super Bowl and during the season. He had 8 sacks, 41 tackles, 9 TFLs, and 15 QB hits. I think he is going to be a stud if he stays in Philly or if he goes somewhere else. I think he's going to be a great pickup for whoever signs him. Probably a 4-year contract that he will end up getting with a big amount of money. Number 2, Khalil Mack said he wasn't going to retire. He's coming back. He had 6 sacks, 39 tackles, 6 TFLs, and 15 QB hits. I think that he is also a great piece. Played great in Los Angeles. That who knows if they're going to want to keep him, but I think he still is a great edge rusher. Maybe just a third down specialist now because he is so old, but I think he still can pick it up and just keep stacking on the Hall of Fame career that he has had so far in the NFL. Number 3, Chase Young, former first-round pick, had 5.5 sacks, 31 tackles, 8 TFLs, and 21 QB hits. He is only 25 years old. People do forget that. Got let go from Washington, signed with the Saints. I really wanted my Carolina Panthers to sign him. We have another chance to sign him here and give him a good contract. I would love to see Chase Young in Carolina. I think he is a great piece, and you don't get drafted number 1 for no reason and then stay in the league. I think Chase Young would be a great piece. Number 4, you have kind of the sack specialist, the 30-year-old Dante Fowler, 10.5 sacks, 39 tackles, 14 TFLs, and 12 QB hits. He's a great piece for that Washington team this year, and I think that he will just continue to be great in the NFL at that third down specialist type of role, continue to get sacks, and I think that Washington should really keep him. I think that they have the money, and they should keep him. You want to keep as many good people while you have Jaden Daniels on that rookie contract before you have to pay him like $300 million in a couple years. I think that he is a great piece for that Washington team. Next, number 5, Azeez Ojulari, 24 years old, 6 sacks, 28 tackles, 7 TFLs, and 10 QB hits. I mean, he's young, 24 years old. I think that he is a great piece for whoever signs him, honestly. He's a young guy. You can give him a couple years to develop. He's only 24. You give him maybe a year just to be a rotational guy, and I really think he takes off. And I think if the Eagles don't want to keep Josh Sweat, you sign Azeez Ojulari to kind of rotate with Nolan Smith and a couple other guys, and he creates an impact. And then obviously the top dog that requested a trade, but he's obviously not a free agent, Myles Garrett, 29 years old, 14 sacks, 47 tackles, 22 TFLs, and 28 QB hits. He is obviously the belle of the ball here in the free agency class. He's going to command a lot. Andrew Berry said he's not trading him, but there is a price for everything. And as the days go on, where he realizes that Myles Garrett doesn't want to be in Cleveland, then he's going to start taking those phone calls. And yeah, some other notable names in this free agency class, is Hassan Reddick, Dennis Gardeck, Demarcus Lawrence, Matt Judon, Baron Browning, and Joseph Asai, and Deo from Indianapolis. I think that there is a good amount of edges and some plug-and-play guys in this free agency class that will go a long way into being great pieces in the NFL. Next, interior defensive lineman. This is a little bit of a scarce list as well. You have one really good guy, and the rest are kind of just there. Number one, Milton Williams, the 25-year-old, also on this Super Bowl winning team. I saw numbers like 5 years, $80 million for this guy. He had 5 sacks, 24 tackles, 7 TFLs, and 10 QB hits this year. I think that he is a great interior defensive lineman, and he's going to go somewhere else that's not Philadelphia and ball out for whatever team he ends up signing with. Number 2, like I said, it falls off immensely after that. Number 2, Jaron Reed, 4.5 sacks, 45 tackles, 5 TFLs, and 15 QB hits. He's 32 years old. He's been doing it for a while. I think he's going to get a contract for sure, but don't really know what the numbers will look like. I guess we'll see once free agency starts. But yeah, Jaron Reed at number 2. And then at number 3, BJ Hill, 29 years old, 3 sacks, 56 tackles, 7 TFLs, and 9 QB hits. Another guy that's just, he's on the top 3 because this free agency class is so scarce. And then some other notable names, Tierra Tart and Sebastian Joseph Day, can also make great pieces for a team in the NFL. And then here, the linebackers, a couple old names that have been doing it for a while, some all-pros, and some young guys that have also been doing it for a good amount of time. Number 1, the Eagles' prized possession, Zach Bond, 28 years old, had 151 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 11 TFLs, 5 forced fumbles, and a pick. You saw him pick off Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl to really just put that game on ice. And I think that he's going to get a lot of money from the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think that he'll leave Philadelphia, but he is a free agent, and that's why I have him at number 1. Number 2, Bobby Wagner, 34 years old, getting up there in age. I could see him staying in Washington or following his old coach and going to Las Vegas with Pete Carroll. He had 132 tackles this year, 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, and 1 forced fumble. Always going to be a tackling machine until he does retire. I think he has 1 or 2 years left, and he wants to win a Super Bowl, so he's going to go to a contender. Number 3, another Kansas City Chief, Nick Bolton, 24 years old. He had 106 tackles, 3 sacks, 11 TFLs, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pick. I mean, 2 years ago, some people were saying that he's the best off-the-ball linebacker in the NFL, and I think he still has that potential. He's so young, and I think that Kansas City should consider keeping him. But if they don't, I mean, he's going to command a good amount of money since he is so young and has shown that he can do it for already about like 3-4 years. I think that Nick Bolton is a great piece. Number 4, Eric Kendricks, the 32-year-old, 138 tackles, 3 sacks, 4 TFLs, 2 INTs, and 3 forced fumbles. He's always been that pass coverage type linebacker, very fast, all-pro level, and still getting a lot of tackles at his age. And I think that he should also go to a contender because he brings a lot to a NFL organization. At number 5, an all-pro with a couple years left, Levante David, 35 years old, 122 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 9 TFLs, 3 forced fumbles, and a pick. Like I said in my mock draft, Jahad Campbell, I picked him to be the Levante David replacement because I don't see Levante coming back to Tampa Bay. But wherever he does go, I think he will be a great fit because he has been doing it for so long in Tampa and has always been a top 5, top 10 linebacker in this league when he has been on his game. Some other notable names, Dre Greenlaw. I mean, he could be in the top 5 if he didn't pop his Achilles last Super Bowl. You have Ernest Jones, EJ Speed, who had some turmoil in Indianapolis this year. That's why I don't see him coming back. Shaq Thompson, I hope to see back in Carolina as a Panthers fan. And then Jamian Sherwood out there in New York is also a young guy who could command a lot of money in this free agency. Next up, you got the cornerback position. Number 1, Byron Murphy, the 27-year-old, 6 picks, 14 PBUs, 1 forced fumble, and 81 tackles. Is a great cornerback. I could see him staying in Minnesota, but also he's going to probably command a lot of money, and you paid Jay Jettas already a good amount of money. So who knows? I guess we'll see once free agency comes. Number 2, DJ Reed, the 28-year-old, had 11 PBUs this year and 64 tackles. Always a great corner. Has been really underrated for a couple years, and I think he will still be a serviceable cornerback in the NFL. Number 3, Carlton Davis, the 28-year-old, 2 INTs, 11 PBUs, 1 forced fumble, and 56 tackles. Also a great corner. Has won a Super Bowl before in Tampa, and I think that he brings good experience now that he is 28 years old to a locker room, and also the starting corner ability. I think my favorite cornerback in the class, number 4, Paulson Adebo, 25 years old, 3 INTs, 10 PBUs, and 52 tackles, and only 7 games played. If New Orleans doesn't keep this man around and give him a good amount of money, then I don't know what they're doing. He's a great cornerback, had an injury, but in those 7 games played, that's a big sample size, and I think that he will be a great corner. You could see him like crazily ending up on the 49ers and then balling out, being that like Charvarius Ward type player who is also a free agent. Number 5 for the Ravens, Brandon Stevens, 27 years old, 10 PBUs, 7 tackles, 1.5 sacks. Kind of played slot corner a little bit there in Baltimore. Also think he is a great piece. 27 years old, hasn't proven a lot like these other guys, but I still think he is a very good piece for an NFL team. And then some other notable names, you have Nate Hobbs, Jordan Lewis, Asante Samuel Jr., who just got hurt this year, but has always been a good corner, and I would love to see him on a good team. Stephon Gilmore getting up there in age, but still having all-pro seasons. Charvarius Ward had an off year this year from his CB1 year last year. Shaquille Griffin and then Dante Jackson rounds out the cornerback group in this free agency class. And then lastly, you have the safeties, who I think this is a pretty good safety class. Number 1, Javon Holland. I don't see him staying in Miami. 24 years old, 4 PBUs, 62 tackles, 1 forced fumble. A great young safety in this league, and he's going to get a lot of money from whoever wants to pay him. Number 2, Justin Reed, 27 years old, 2 INTs, 9 PBUs, and 87 tackles this year. A great safety for a Super Bowl run with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that he is a great safety in this league. Could see him getting a good amount of money as well. Only 27 years old. People might think he's a little older because he was so young when he was balling out with the Texans that he will get a good amount of money. Number 3, Trayvon Moehrig, 25 years old, 2 INTs, 10 PBUs, 104 tackles. A lot of tackles from him this year, but he's also a pretty good zone coverage safety who I think is a great young piece and going to be a stud, a very serviceable safety in the league for years to come. Number 4, so mad that the Panthers gave him up. Jeremy Chin, 26 years old, 1 INT, 1 forced fumble, 117 tackles, 2 sacks, and 7 TFLs this year for Washington. What a great addition for Washington. In the box safety, tall and young, and I think that he should end up staying in Washington. If they want to keep him, I think they should. Number 5, Cam Bynum, 26 years old, 3 INTs, 10 PBUs, and 96 tackles for this Minnesota Vikings team. You saw the spark plug that he was for this defense with the celebrations and his play on field. I'd be surprised if he didn't end up back in Minnesota. But that is my top 5 at the safety position. Some other notable names to look out for in this free agency class: Julian Blackmon, Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs, Will Harris, and Xavier Woods could all be great, serviceable, not great, safeties in this league. The only great one is Justin Simmons. Had a little off year, but has those all-pro years a couple years ago, and I think that he still has that ability in him. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share, and let me know what you would like to see for the next episode. Peace.